Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into Chapter 24 of Nāgārjuna's Mūlamadhyamakakārikā, and we're tackling something truly profound. In our previous sessions, we've broken down some incredibly complex Buddhist concepts. But now, we're taking our rigorous Madhyamaka logic and pointing it straight at the two truths themselves. Our goal? To categorically prove that the ultimate truth of emptiness is not, in any way, shape, or form, a slide into nihilism. Actually, it's the exact opposite.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the charge of nihilism, identify the triad, apply our tetralemma, explore the union of truths, transcend with the middle way, and finally show how emptiness literally enables everything.
Section 1. The charge of nihilism. Let's tackle the elephant in the room right from the very first verses.
So right out of the gate, the opponent comes out swinging. They argue that if all phenomena are truly empty, then the Four Noble Truths basically do not exist. To them, a lack of inherent existence means absolute zero, nothingness. They think Nāgārjuna is just preaching pure, chaotic nihilism, and that he's using emptiness to violently tear down the path, the methods, and the entire goal of liberation.
And man, this perfectly highlights the core misunderstanding at play here. The opponent is completely confusing a lack of inherent existence with total absolute non-existence. They've created this false binary, right? They think emptiness is this destructive force meant to wipe out conventional reality, when in fact, emptiness is the exact fabric that allows conventional reality to function in the first place.
Section 2. Identifying the triad. To dismantle this critique, we need to set up our classic Madhyamaka framework.
Let's clearly define our terms so we know what we're testing. We've got T1, which is conventional truth. Think dependent origination. Then there's T2, the ultimate truth, which is the emptiness of inherent existence. And finally, U, which stands for the union, relation, or perceived opposition between these two truths. Getting this shared vocabulary locked in is absolutely crucial.
Now, as you guys already know, these two truths are the absolute bedrock of the Buddha's teachings. But here is the catch. Just knowing they exist isn't enough. If you don't deeply understand how they relate and function together, the whole conceptual structure basically collapses into misunderstanding.
Moving to Section 3. Applying the tetralemma. We are taking our sharpest analytical tool and pointing it right at the triad we just built.
Let's run this triad through the four corners. If the two truths were completely different, they'd be in total absolute opposition. Emptiness would just destroy conventional reality. If they were identical, they'd just be synonyms, which ignores how they actually function differently. They can't be both, and they definitely can't be neither. So, because they aren't inherently different, we mathematically prove there is zero real opposition between them. Emptiness does not deny conventional truth.
But this leaves us with a really fascinating question for our opponent. If they're wrong, and emptiness doesn't oppose conventional reality, but they aren't the exact same thing either, what exactly is their relationship?
Well, the logical conclusion is that the triad itself, the two truths and their relationship, is totally empty of inherent existence. They are never absolute. And because they're empty, we definitively prove that emptiness is not opposing your conventional methods, models, or your path to liberation. Emptiness is decidedly not nihilism.
Section 4. The union of truths. Let's see how this all comes together into something functional.
So the two truths are completely inseparable and dependently co-originated. They literally define each other. This is what we call the union of the two truths. They are mere designations, conventional tools that beautifully support and energize one another. We have to be super careful here. Do not mistake these tools for absolute, concrete realities. They work together, yeah, but they aren't the ultimate building blocks of the universe.
I love this part. Nāgārjuna actually gets a bit playful and mocks the opponent. He says, making emptiness into this absolute destructive thing is like mounting a horse but totally forgetting about the horse itself. The opponent is projecting their own rigid thinking onto Nāgārjuna, using a conceptual tool while entirely forgetting they're relying on it to make their argument.
This shows us that the triad acts like an illusion or a mirage. The two truths fully function in our everyday world. They produce very real, tangible effects, but they don't have a solid core. It's this wild state of being there, yet not there, which is just about the farthest thing you can get from nihilism. It's actually a state of pure, boundless potential.
Section 5. Transcending with the middle way. Okay, practically speaking,
How do we actually use these empty, illusory tools without getting totally stuck in the conceptual weeds?
We have to transcend all that dualistic baggage. The true nature of reality is way beyond any absolute this, like our conditioned, everyday reality, or any absolute non-this, like some sort of mystical, transcendental void. It's not both, and it's not neither. Reality simply is, resting completely beyond our dualistic grasping.
And this gives us our day-to-day operating system. The middle way means we don't rigidly accept or reject these truths. We don't cling to them as ultimate saviors, and we don't throw them in the trash as useless illusions. We just use them as what they are, highly skillful, conventional tools, completely without attachment.
But Nāgārjuna gives us a really stark warning here. If you mistakenly grab onto these tools as absolute realities, it's literally like grabbing a venomous snake by the wrong end. The exact thing meant to liberate you will whip around and bite you, infecting you with extreme views of either naive realism or paralyzing nihilism. You have to handle it with care.
Section 6. Emptiness enables everything. We've reached the climax of Chapter 24. Time for Nāgārjuna's absolute mic drop moment.
Where emptiness is granted, everything is likewise granted. I mean, wow. This brilliantly states the thesis. Without emptiness, nothing could ever interact or change. If things were perfectly solid and inherent, the universe would be frozen stiff. It is emptiness itself, the absolute lock of solidity, that makes dependent origination, and therefore the Four Noble Truths, even possible in the first place.
We've got to remember that our conceptual maps and models only work precisely because they are fluid and empty. If you start confusing the map for the actual territory, you reify it. And boom, the moment you do that, your entire path to liberation just freezes. With emptiness, the whole system works. Without it, nothing does.
So ultimately, we're just asked to abide in suchness, to see reality exactly as it is, primordially equal, pure, and complete. We use the two truths like a conventional medicine to gracefully break down our illusions, but, and this is absolutely key, you cannot become addicted to the medicine itself.
I'll leave you with this to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. If conventional truths, including the very teachings of the Buddhist path itself, are ultimately just illusions empty of inherent existence, how are you going to skillfully wield them today without getting caught in the trap of taking them too seriously? Keep exploring that, and I'll see you in the next explainer.